Okay, seems as good a time as any to get started. Hopefully our audio is behaving. Clap test. I hope it behaves today. Otherwise it causes a lot of extra work for me when I am editing. But yeah. Hello everyone. Don't know why I'm doing that. But yeah, hello everybody. Potential boomers, current boomers. I'm Marcus, maybe more better known as Boomer Tester. Today I'm going to be demonstrating AI-assisted code review. Full disclosure, I'm not the one that kind of came up with this idea. I saw this originally in the Automation Guild 2025 this year. I don't remember the speaker. What I wanted to do was have a more prescriptive and more direct use case for this. Kind of take someone through step by step. If this is something that they wanted to learn how to do or try out, or weren't sure how to start, I wanted to give something more containerized where the demonstration that I saw was a little more generic and the approach was a little different. So my approach is a little more direct, specifically with Playwright in TypeScript, written in TypeScript. You could apply this to any other testing framework, Selenium WebDriver. You could apply it to Cypress.io. You name it, really. There's probably there's so many different kinds of so many different language and frameworks. Shouldn't I be working? Yo, what's up, Abraham? Yeah, I should be. No, I blocked this time out on my work schedule, but it's good to see you. Yeah, I blocked this time out. My job's aware that I do this. Is my title bar flickering? Yeah. It's because I'm on Linux. It's my curse. It's my curse. There's something that doesn't, I think it's when I mouse over it. But it's because I had the mouse over it. It's Linux. It's Linux stuff. Yeah, I originally saw someone demonstrate this at Automation Guild 2025. So shout out, Joe Calantonio does a great online, and now it's doing it again. Of course it's going to happen today when I want to record. Well, I am recording. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Abe. That flickering is going to bother me, but luckily we're not looking at the browser very much, hopefully. So we're all going to pretend like it's not happening. I'm going to gaslight all of you to be like, no, everything's fine. Nothing is wrong. But yeah, Joe Calantonio does a paid, it does cost money, online test automation conference. He was one of the first I saw that was doing it for specifically testing software quality. He's been doing it for several years, having excellent speakers, excellent topics, and he's built like a community around it too. So if you do join, there's like a community, there's a way to hang out and get to know the people. You can even talk to the speakers through direct messages if you're part of the conference. So yeah, big shout out to Joe Calantonio. He also has a YouTube channel I would go check out as well. It's well worth your time. But again, I just wanted to make sure I put that out there. People like, hey, I was at Automation Guild 2025 and they already did this. Like, yes, but again, I wanted to kind of containerize it, take it a little further, be more prescriptive, give something you could start with. So that thing you can start with is I have a repository out on GitHub. I have a link. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a link in the description, but I'll drop these in chat for anyone, just in case. And you guys don't have to be afraid to chat with me. I sound like I'm recording like an infomercial, but I just want to make sure to get some of this out of the way and to make the YouTube videos snazzy, because I can cut anything I want out. I could say anything I want. And I have to not say because I have to cut those out too. But yeah, just drop the link in chat for anyone that is watching live. Otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube later, I will put a link in the description. But this repository is everything you should need to get started, other than the things you're going to have to go and install. But there is a README that'll take you through step by step if you want to do this. And again, the cool part is you don't have to create some of the other pieces. Some of those other pieces being like the code standards document that I created for you already. You don't have to create the really bad tests. So what's really great about this repository is there's really poorly written tests in it for you already, and the README file. and the code standards file. So this is pretty much ready to go. So we'll look at we'll go to VS Code really quick, mostly because that flickering is driving me crazy. And I'm hoping VS Code doesn't flicker too. But the use case here is that you are reviewing what's called a pull request. So you're doing a code review. So a pull request, for those that don't know, you're using Git or some sort of source control, and someone wants to merge their code into the main branch where other people are working. And it's a set of tests, and you've been asked, a lot of times there's rules within a repository, you've been asked to review that code in that branch, in that pull request, to approve it, to say, yep, this code is good, these are good. In our case, in our use case, these are tests. And you're saying, yes, these tests are good, and they meet our company or team's standards. So that's where this is going to come in. So other couple of quick caveats I want to make sure I cover, I don't want to forget. AI, for now, generative AI for now is not a silver bullet. It's not to always be trusted. Think of generative AI like like an assistant. Think of it like a junior assistant, someone or an intern. You need to check all their work. Sometimes they're going to make mistakes, and sometimes they're going to make stuff up. So again, just the caveat there, this is not like you get to sit back and do nothing during like a code review and AI is going to do everything. This is more like you have an additional person who is like a junior QA engineer that's going to look at the code also, that has an understanding of the standards for either your org, your personal standards, or whatever, which you're going to provide it using a markdown file. In my example, again, in the demo that I saw at Automation Guild, they didn't use a .md file. It wasn't in a repository. They just kind of had like a Word document. And I kind of knew this could be better. I was like, I think generative AI, especially the code assisted tools, they work really well with markdown files. And if you aren't familiar with markdown files, it's essentially code that makes a text document. In VS Code, you can preview this file and see what it's going to look like sites like GitHub or GitLab. I said that like GitHub. Do you know what GitHub is? So sites like GitHub and GitLab are going to render this MD file and format it properly for you. So you can almost think of it like Markdown as like HTML or any other language where it's a markdown language that then gets displayed somewhere else, and it's going to look different. It's got code to it, a source code in a way, or a formatting code, and then it gets displayed a little prettier, and you can do a preview of that. Or again, if we went back to the Git repo, it gets displayed there correctly with the correct formatting. So this code standards doc, not to get ahead of ourselves too much, I wrote this myself with a little bit of help from ChatGPT. I'm not going to pretend that I read all the source documentation. And that's, again, where Gen AI can be really helpful to you, is the fact that you can use it to read a document for you and give you a summary. The problem is, in this case, it hallucinated. Well, it didn't hallucinate. It wasn't as detail oriented as I wanted. In regards to like the TypeScript standards, it did really well. I think it did really well. It summarized it really nicely for me. These are pretty much de facto standards. A lot of these would quite possibly be caught by some of the tools in a development pipeline already, but I still thought I'd include them here because there are some things that could slip through the cracks. And it's always good to be really vigilant and make sure that you're being as detail oriented as possible, right? Code, especially if it's really crucial test code, or even just if you wanted to use this for your development code, you want development code and app code to be really stable, and you want to be really vigilant there. So again, I use ChatGPT. I like perused these myself a little bit and looked through and said, okay, I could see there's a lot of info here, and I was like, here, ChatGPT, summarize this for me in like with bullet points, and it did a really. And I mean, when I say ChatGPT, I'm talking about ChatGPT. And that would be, again, going back to my advice, just to reiterate there. Start playing with Gen AI now. That's what I would say. Like, don't be afraid of it. be smart and careful with it. That's something I'm going to talk about with this, where if you're going to be using proprietary code, say you go beyond using my purposely bad tests, and you start using code within your company or code within a project or something, you need to make sure that you're careful, and you need to anytime you can opt out, like with the tools I'm going to show, there's ways to opt out of sending your data. With both, today we're going to look at Amazon Q and GitHub Copilot. Well, actually, I think just for this scope of today, let me roll that back. Editor Marcus, remove that. For today, we're just going to look at Amazon Q, I believe. We may look at both, and I may be a liar, and then Editor Marcus will have to fix that in some way, make it make sense. Because I don't have an editor. I am the editor. I am the law. So, okay. So yeah, like I said, with Gen AI, be smart, be careful, realize that they're using your data to train new models. Okay, accept that. If you're getting it for free, it's not really free. And you can pay. You can pay for a lot of these models and things, but if you're getting it for free, it's like any Google product that's free. Google is taking all your data, or Microsoft product, anything. You're usually agreeing to give them all your data, or a lot of your data, obfuscated, and they use it for training, marketing purposes, lots of different things, right? I used to work for a company. That was a big bulk of what we did. You used our plugin, and then you agreed to allow us to scrape your email and scrape other things, right? And we obfuscated the data. That means that we hide any of like the PII, which is like the sensitive information. And so your sensitive information isn't getting leaked, but it was definitely creepy. That's a rabbit trail we won't go on. This idea that we could create a profile and you could tell so much about the person based on like their email or their purchasing habits. It was really intriguing, but also a little creepy. Anyways, so be smart about your Gen AI use, but don't be afraid of it either. I feel like this is going to be the de facto way to be an engineer, to be a designer, to be a writer, whether you like it or not. Gen AI is going to be a part of our lives. I think for the near and distant future. It may not be the silver bullet to general intelligence, but at the very least, it is a useful tool that you have to be cautious with and double check. Again, it should give you a place, and in this case, it's going to give you a place to start, and it may find things you don't find, but you have to be careful about what's called a hallucination, okay? Just putting it out there. Be careful, be smart. There's ways to opt out in the method I'm going to show. There's a way to opt out. I'm not here. It may be one of these times on a stream I'll show how to opt out too, but really, I don't care if like GitHub uses my bad tests to trade. In fact, I might be sabotaging them because I purposely wrote a bunch of terrible tests for the sake of testing out this code review to see if it would catch things in our rules, and we'll get to that. So we'll go through these standards fairly quickly after I get a sip of water. Ah, delicious. This stream is sponsored by water. Oh, sweet, delicious water. So, Abe, are you? I am curious. You don't have to answer if you're busy, but I'm curious if you're on a job right now, or if you're just chilling. Oh, then some coffee. I'm gonna hydrate, then dehydrate. So yeah, these are pretty. We'll get to the TypeScript standards first in this doc. And so the first one is really a lot of common TypeScript best practices, and those you can find the sources here in the .md. I won't belabor this, but there are a few of these that we purposely attempt to violate in our bad tests. Playwright standards. These came from Playwright's documentation itself. And again, for those not aware, Playwright is a test automation framework. There is implementations in many programming languages, maybe compared to Cypress, that's only TypeScript and JavaScript. Playwright has implementations in C#.NET. It's got Python, the coding gods help you if you're writing it in Python, but because I've tried that before. But TypeScript, JavaScript, several different implementations. So it is a test, probably one of the latest and hottest test automation frameworks next to Cypress. Code driven. You do have to write code, but it's got a lot of features, and we could cover that another time. Or there's better videos. You look at like the Automation Panda. Automation Panda has great videos. There's so many other people out there with better videos or just great videos about Playwright. And I wasn't saying better videos than Andy from the Automation Panda. He has some of the best videos. In fact, he was at Automation Guild 2025 recently and kind of blew my mind with some stuff that I want to start leveraging. But I think it was with fixtures. There's this idea of a fixture in Playwright, but again, we're gonna keep getting rabbit trailed. But these best practicing standards are directly from Playwright. It's from their dev docs. This is where ChatGPT failed me a bit. So I had to kind of go in and, unfortunately, I actually had to read. I actually had to use my eyes and read. So I went through and I read the document, kind of using what ChatGPT had generated me. I'm going to have to expand on this, but let's go through some of these because they are important to Playwright and they are important to this use case of, again, you are maybe even the idea that you are someone completely new. You are a manual QA engineer, and they just have you contributing test automation. This would be a great learning tool for you. Will you write your first test and maybe you run the static code review based on your company's standards for tests and go, oh gosh, I'm missing all these things. And then what's great too is you can have the generative AI help teach you why, because it'll be able to go out and determine why these things are standards and kind of teach it to you. So there's so many great possibilities here, using this as a learning tool, using this as a tool for standards, but also just overall, hopefully increasing the quality of your automated tests. So all tests should follow common Playwright best practices. So common as in it's in their documentation. This isn't my opinion. We'll get to the next section is Marcus's opinion, or Boomer Tester's opinion, right? Is the next section. Some of it is like industry standard. Some is just my personal opinion. So if you get bent out of shape, just send me a strongly worded telegram or something. So yeah, test user visible behavior. This one's a little tough for the Gen AI to get, but I still include it. Who knows, as the models improve, they'll get even better at determining if the tests are doing this. But this is where you focus on end user interactions, avoid reliance on implementation details. And we can get to that. It's a bit deeper, but for now, we'll just leave it at that, because that could be a whole video itself. You want to isolate tests. This is also a personal one of mine, but ensure each test runs independently with its own session and data. This will improve reliability and debugging. Your test there shouldn't be an interconnected dependency. Each test should be modular or atomic. It should be runnable without another test. When you start doing that, you create this domino or Rube Goldberg machine of like tests where it's like, well, this test has to run first, and then this test, and then this test. And then if that test fails, it kind of throws the whole thing off, and your data you start getting a lot of messy data. It starts to become really difficult to tell what's actually happening in your tests or what the actual outcome was. So when you have them very modular and isolated, you can run them all separately. There's hopefully no side effects. Again, we could probably do like a whole video just about that. It's a soapbox I could talk about far too much, but just very basically, your tests shouldn't have dependencies or side effects to other tests. Avoid testing third-party dependencies. So control test environments, use mock data, which Playwright is quite good at, so Cypress, and avoid tests dependent on external sources. And again, this is best practice. There's going to be times that is unavoidable. And again, I'm not sure the generative AI will catch this, at least the current models. People watching this in the future, well, who's going to watch this in the future? It's possible you're sitting on your hover seat and you're watching this laughing because you're like, haha, generative AI is totally capable of this. Well, right now, generative AI is not as good at these type of things. generative AI is good for more straightforward code standards, and those are the things I think it's better at catching, and we'll likely see that, or hopefully see that, or else this whole demo is is an abject failure. Next one, use locators. So this one's great, and I violated this in the past, especially when I was new to test automation. Full disclosure background on this, I've been doing this for roughly 13 years, and I was mostly self-taught based on a survival mechanism. I just needed to survive because I was one manual tester to many developers. And then the senior QA quit, who was pretty much our main automation source, and then the QA manager quit. It was just myself and one other like long-term SME subject matter expert who was also all manual. And so I learned test automation through Java, Selenium WebDriver, I believe it was Rest Assured, on my own. So I was a little rough. I would have loved to have had standards like this, because back then there was less resources. There was Automation Guild, which I should have probably attended more often. Another free plug for Joe Calantonio's Automation Guild. But so this is something I've definitely violated in the past. So use locators. Prefer resilient locators, such as role and name, over volatile CSS or XPath selectors. I know, shame. I've done this before. There's just times that I'm not trying to make excuses, but there's times it's really hard to not use CSS or XPath. And for those maybe that aren't as familiar, it's just this idea that you're trying to use role and name for a web element tends to be less volatile than the CSS or XPath, which can change as elements get moved around, as styling changes, where generally its role or its name is not going to change. You may be changing the test outright. Another thing, you leverage Playwright's auto weighting and retry features. We'll kind of get into that later in my personal rules. Use web first assertions. So don't use manual assertions, but instead use web first assertions like to be visible, so that Playwright will wait until the expected condition is met. So what this means, it kind of goes back to number 4, because it's also using some auto weighting and retry. It's this idea that you await. So we could get into asynchronous and synchronous. Hold on. I'm getting caught in the mouth. So Playwright in most web development is asynchronous now. The idea that you can have multiple threads going, doing things, and that thing generally is going to return something, a promise. And that's so that multiple jobs can be run and go do lots of things to get maybe other things done, and all these different processes can go. So when you say await, you are asking something that is asynchronous to sort of be synchronous, in the sense that I'm going to wait on this thing to return some sort of promise to me. So in this case, if you look at the example, where the incorrect way to do this is you're going to await the location of an element and whether it's visible. You're kind of wrapping that in an expect to be true. This is the wrong way to do this, because what will happen is when this runs in the test, it's going to get the element, look to see if it's visible, and if that ends up being true, it's going to, this assertion is going to pass. And maybe to step back, an assertion is what you're attempting to validate within your test. It's how you determine if your test was successful. It's like saying, I expect this button to be blue. I expect my name to be at the top of the page when I log in on where my user profile is supposed to be. It's essentially, how do I know this test succeeded, other than just throwing an exception? Okay. And exceptions are when there's a somewhat critical failure with an app, or some sort of failure that goes beyond what the app can handle. It throws, so in this case of Playwright throws an exception. It's something beyond its control that it wasn't able to handle. So the correct way to do this is to await the expect. So now we're going to sit like this and go, okay, I'm going to wait up to a certain amount of time for this condition to be true, rather than I'm going to wait for this element. Once the element there, check if it's visible. If it's not, well, failed the test. Because of the asynchronous nature of most web applications now, that's not a very good way to test. You want to do it the second way, which you could think of it as like polling on that condition. So you're kind of waiting for it to be visible. Okay, we're waiting. And there's always a max time you can set in Playwright in particular. Most other frameworks too, like Cypress. But in this case, you're kind of waiting on that condition. The element exists. We're pretty certain of that. And we're waiting for it to be, we expect it to be visible. We're going to wait for that to be true before the test moves on. And we're going to mark this as a pass. If it times out, then we're going to mark this as a failure. And we'll get into hard and soft asserts in a second, because that's where hard and soft asserts are important. So that's the Playwright standards. It's not all of them, but it's all of them that I felt were relevant to at least code in particular. There's some best practices that are specific to how you use Playwright. From like externally outside of code, I wanted to focus on things specific to the code. Next, this is my soapbox section. This is the stuff. This is like Uncle Boomer's personal opinions about test automation and testing. So caveat there: some people share these opinions, some do not. That are fairly prolific in the field. In fact, I've had lively debates about many of the topics in this next section. This next section are kind of general test automation standards, and primarily are my own personal. Though, as you can see, Automation Panda, Andy is a wonderful, wonderful resource. He also agrees with me on this first one, which is all tests should adhere to arrange, act, assert. So this is about arrangement or pattern of your tests. The arrange step, these steps should set up the test case. Consider using before hooks when these steps are shared by multiple tests. So it's this idea that you may have a lot of repetition. Maybe the test always goes to this page, always logs in. You should use a before hook. That way, your only dependency chain is on some hook that happens before and not on another test to log in, right? Like you don't want your login test to always proceed like your other tests, and it needs to be logged in, because then again, you're sharing session data. This is a little different. This is where you're using like a utility hook to do stuff that every test needs to do or certain tests need to do. Act. These steps act on the target behavior of the test. This is the stuff you're doing. You're clicking around, you're doing stuff within the app, trying to achieve something that the app's supposed to do. Usually you'd call that like requirements or acceptance criteria. What's this thing supposed to do? Then assert, verify the accuracy of the response from the test actions. Your test did a bunch of stuff. What did we expect to see? What's supposed to happen? If we add something to our cart, we expect that thing to be in our cart, right? So then you'd go to the cart and say, yep, that stuff's in my cart. For some reason, it's not in my cart. Something went wrong, right? Like something's wrong with my add to cart button. Maybe something's wrong with the navigation to the cart. Something's goofed up. So that's your assert phase. This might seem really obvious to someone who works in testing, but you'd be surprised sometimes when folks write automated tests, they will mangle this up and make the tests unnecessarily complex, unnecessarily difficult to understand, yada yada. So next one, again, personal preference here, but why use test automation if you're not going to do this? All tests should contain assertions. I posted online about this, a video, a clip, and apparently it's controversial. I didn't think it was controversial. But it's this idea that all tests must contain assertions. Each test must contain at least one hard assertion. So the idea of a hard assertion is if that assertion fails, the test execution of that test ceases. It's marked as a failure in the reporting. Assertions between actions should be soft asserts, in my opinion. It's this idea that you have these interstitial things you want to validate. You want to know if they happened, but you may want the test to continue to execute. You don't want execution to cease. So you may want to check for something, and it actually is often useful because it's extra data for you when you're going to look at test results. But this is what I like to do. I feel like it makes tests clean, it makes the test data useful, but I did not expect to get any pushback online, and I did. Next one, tests should not contain fixed waiting. So fixed waiting, think of thread.sleep. Any of the other methods just to postpone execution of the next line of code. Okay. Yeah. Well, I put a definition there, duh, for the generative. Fixed waiting is when the execution of a test is postponed for a predetermined amount of time. Okay. It's called you could call it hard waiting. Is this idea like it's this amount of time, we're going to wait no matter what. We have no awareness of the state of the app. We have no awareness of the system. We're just going to wait. We're going to sit there like this. Our test is going to cross its arms and do nothing. That is not ideal, because as your tests grow, you are creating this built-in penalty for your test suite. Every time those tests run, and as more tests get added and you keep adding more hard waits, that penalty grows larger and larger and larger, and it violates getting that fast, reliable, consistent feedback that you want from automated tests. It kind of defeats the purpose. Eventually, it may come to the point it's faster for a person to just manually do the tests, because you may have so many of those waits. And again, kind of going back to that asynchronous nature of web development, this is sometimes what's used to plaster over like race conditions, as in the idea that the automated test goes to do something too quickly before the app's ready, or vice versa. It missed the window and now it can't do the thing it wanted to do. The app beat the automated test, right? So what to do instead is hook into the app state. Use auto waiting and retry features provided by the automation framework. So again, be patient about an element appearing, but also you can hook into app state, as in you can hook it into the network calls. You can wait until a certain call completes, or a certain call completes and then gives a certain response. So you can, anyone that's ever looked in like the network tab of your browser, something I'd suggest people do, you may learn something really interesting about how the app works, or maybe a certain app you like to use and you have it in the browser. Open up the network tab and the dev tools and look and see what it's doing. You may see different calls being fired and things like that. It's a really great way to kind of get an idea of how the flow of the app from a like system or state level works. You can spy on variables and things like that, as just different values that are getting set change. But you can hook into these too with the automated suite. So wait on visibility of key elements or network calls to complete. Little sipperoonie here again. Oh, it's delicious water. I am on a fast right now. I usually am on a fast till like 3 p.m. Eastern time. So it's black coffee, keto electrolytes. Well, and I take my magnesium as well, and I also take creatine, black coffee, and water till 3. Puts me in that insano mode. gets me in insano mode. Okay, so yeah, don't use fixed waiting unless you absolutely have to. I'd almost say if you feel like there is no other solution but to use fixed waiting, you need to step back and consider whether that test is still valuable as an automated test. I would highly suggest you consider the value of still running that test as a manual test, documenting it well, and then talking to your developers, like your dev team, about it, and see if there's any way to get a hook into app state. Because again, it's a slippery slope when you start putting those hard weights in. It's a very slippery slope, and it kind of, again, it violates a lot of the, or maybe not violates, let's say it eliminates a lot of the advantages of automated testing, which is fast, reliable, consistent feedback. Because now again, you're in this, you have this penaltied state with your automated testing. Let's go to the next one. Single responsibility principle should be followed. If a function's purpose is to assert, it should only have assertions. If a function's purpose is to perform a task, It should only perform that task. If a function's purpose is not to assert, it should not have assertions. We could have some wiggle room here with soft assertions, and maybe we could reword this as like hard assertions. But generally, everything should have a responsibility, and ideally just that responsibility. This is, again, like one of those slippery slope situations where you try to load all this stuff into your functions that you write as your utilities for your tests, or in the case like Cypress, your Cypress commands, and they get really bloated. And then for one, when someone new comes in that wants to work on your automated test or help or assist, it can be really confusing. You can look and say, well, this is supposed to log me in, but it logs me in and it also does all these other things, right? You want it to be very modularized. It doesn't hurt to write more modular functions and Cypress commands. Like, just use your best, I don't know what I'd say, best judgment. Use your best judgment in this case. And then function names should accurately describe that responsibility. I'm the same with test names, and we cover that down below. And spoiler alert, generative AI is good at catching that. At least if I remember Amazon Q is, which is I'm pretty sure we're going to run Amazon Q today. The flip side of that, don't repeat yourself. If any line of code repeats, well, not really a flip side of that. I guess that's more in 5.6. But anyways, next one, don't repeat yourself. If any line of code repeats, consider using before or after hooks or create a utility function. Now on the flip side, don't needlessly obfuscate. If a function is only called once, we should question whether it needs to be a function. So I've seen many times that people will try to solve a problem they don't actually have yet in their tests. I would say it's my general rule is it's okay to do things in line a few times, and then as you start to see a pattern, then you can start to obfuscate when it makes sense. Yo, what's up? Sudo please over on Kick. Welcome. We're going through I'm kind of going through the code rules that I'm going to provide to generative AI to review some really bad tests that I purposely wrote badly. But welcome. It's good to see some people on Kick. I'm really new to Kick. So hi back. And the fact that you have sudo in your name, that's extra cool too. So the next rule that we're giving to the generative AI is hard-coded values should be replaced with constants. This one's almost like more of a TypeScript standard, but I put it here because I still feel like it's a standard that I always want to reinforce with anyone new, or if I'm training someone on how to contribute to test automation. There's always that temptation to put hard-coded values. And if it is hard-coded, you should find other ways to feed data like that generally, or generate it, right? But if you have to have something hard-coded, please put it in a constant. And from what I remember, another spoiler, pretty sure generative AI was pretty good at catching this. Last one, very similar to the last bullet in number 4. Test names should describe what the test is attempting to verify in human readable language. Here's a really good example of that. And we have some really poorly named tests, which we'll look at next. I swear we'll actually get to the bulk of this, but I think it's important to kind of break down the pieces. So here's a really good example of a good test. Login page should allow user to authenticate. It very clearly tells you what the test is attempting to do, what it expects to happen. Most humans that speak English is one of the languages that they're generally proficient at will understand what this test is going to do. And again, this is one you would be surprised how many people struggle with. That a lot of times. So I should step back too. I am a test automation consultant. I do have a full-time job, a day job, but I also do consulting. And this is something that I spend a lot of time on with people to help them understand, like, how do you write? Because here's one of the things, when you look at a test named like this, it's highly valuable because you can look at this test, and when it fails based on an assertion failure, you know what's wrong. If you have a really generic or vague name, Now you're going to have to dig into it. Like, well, what was I actually doing? It tells what the test is doing. It tells what it expects. Pseudo Please says, this is great. Oh, thank you. I always felt like trying out Uncle Bob's advice on writing tests as a prompt. Yeah. Uncle Bob's great though. Controversial character. I have, I've got 2 of his books in my bookshelf right now. I didn't want to dig around if it's nice, but I've got Clean Craftsmanship, Clean Code. Yeah, it looks like all my programming books are hidden, but I'm glad to hear that you take Uncle Bob's advice. He's a really interesting character. He was on the Primogen this past year, and it was really, really delightful. I don't have Clean Architecture. I have to reread Clean Craftsmanship. I felt like I struggled with it. Also, I started in Java. I'm not really a Java person, so I don't know what it is when the code examples are not in a language that I use. I sometimes struggle grasping the concepts. So I want to go back to Clean Craftsmanship, and I'm interested in Clean Architecture. But it's that thing of wishing I had enough time to read all the books I want to read. But would you recommend Clean Architecture? I've got all the other like typical books over here too. Like I've got TDD by Example, which is like, for me, that was mind blowing. Again, I'm wanting to look and like pull some of my books out, and there's more comic books right now than anything. But there are quite a few programming and testing books, some agile testing books too. It's a bit abstract at times. It really helps if you have a project where you can apply his ideas. Yeah. So I had that opportunity with TDD by Example. That was a really good opportunity to learn. I was working on a proxy. I was working on a proxy server for the company I was working for, and I got to learn how you don't fall in love with the code you write. It's all really disposable when you write TDD. It's like write the test, write just enough to satisfy the test, then write another test. And you realize like how disposable you keep rewriting things and how disposable your code is, and it changes that flow. And I wish I did it more now. I want to get back to it. But for me, you go for the gold late. So these are our code standards. I want to take a look at the tests now so you can see how bad these tests are. I tried to violate almost all the rules, as many of the rules in our standards document as I could. Obviously we've got some stuff that should be consts. I have what I think is a bad name for a test. I tried to write this name that still made sense, but still was terrible. We are repeating ourselves a lot, but I just called the test cart functionality. And this is, so for this, I've been experimenting with Amazon Q and GitHub Copilot. Today I'm going to demo Amazon Q, but I have instructions in the Git repository because there's a repo for this. I dropped a link in chat, but there'll also be a link in the YouTube video once I edit this. I've been using Amazon Q and Copilot for the sake of this gives people the option to opt out. They are working on something at work. They do this demo and they want to try this at work. They're not sending their data. So this is static, like static code review, right? This isn't in your pipeline. That's actually what I wanted. I didn't want this so that you had to inject this in your pipeline. You could do this locally while doing review of code on like a pull request. Yeah, using Copilot, whatever the free tier models are for that and for Q. You can pay to get better models. Spoiler alert, I found Amazon Q strangely better at this task. It may be better at generating code or tab code for you, but I found it's actually quite a bit better at this type of code review than Copilot is. And both currently are free and a free tier, and you can opt out in both, as in I'm not opting. They can have my bad tests. And in fact, I might be messing up their training data by feeding it all this garbage code. So yeah, we're trying to violate as many of our rules as possible. We have some fixed waiting, like we talked about earlier. Instead of hooking into app state, we have this fixed waiting here. We are using CSS and XPath instead of the more ideal locators. We have this really poorly named function called dialogue, and it's where we're dealing with the dialogue on the page. I should have said earlier, I'm using I believe it's the Blaze demo page for this. Yeah, it's right here, the DOI. I'm using the demo Blaze page that's offered by BlazeMeter. They seem to keep it up consistently, and it's a decent app with, I believe, an actual service layer. So you can do API testing, mock testing there. So those are the rules we're violating here. Trying to see if there's anything else. Again, we're being repetitious. We have hard waits. Kind of the same here. We're just trying to violate a lot of those rules. This is a really poorly named function. I'm hoping that the generative AI catches the really bad name. It catches a really bad XPath CSS. We purposely wrote these really bad asserts where we're not awaiting on the assertion. We're awaiting on the page locating a visible element. Which again, this will fire once if the element's there and then just marked as failure, where we want to instead await that assertion. Flip the model. So these are incorrect. I purposely incorrectly wrote those assertions. Again, terrible test name, lots of repetition, a bad name for the variable. We're doing the same thing over and over. There should be a foot before each. A lot of the same stuff. Trying to see if there's any other. Yeah, another poorly named function, another poorly named test, more hard or fixed waiting. Oh, and I have the sign up test rely on the login test, or I have the login test rely on the sign up test on purpose. So I've entangled those two tests. If the sign up test doesn't fire, the login test will always fail because we're setting this global user variable in the sign up test. So it was kind of fun, but also sort of broke my brain to purposely write these as badly as possible. Do all the things that I wouldn't do. All the things that I teach people when I'm consulting not to do. Like, don't do these things. It was really kind of those, it was a bit painful to go, I'm going to do this as badly as I can on purpose. So that was the other thing I want to see if the Gen AI will catch, is there's this entanglement between sign up and login. Really, login should be self-sufficient from sign up. Like one can fail and the other could succeed and they don't rely on each other. Let me turn Amazon Q suggestions off. I don't know why it's firing. So let me see, is there anything else? Yeah, bad locator here. I think bad variable names. We've got this other function, poorly named our email for random email. Again, just trying as many bad variable names as possible. And obviously here we're generating a random email. We could use a library to do this, but I wanted to write a function so that it gave us more opportunity to write bad code. So yeah, there's a couple of our rules violated here. So again, what's really cool, if you wanted to try this yourself, go grab the repository. So we're gonna follow the README file and just walk through it. We're going to use Amazon Q the first time, so we'll go to our README preview. And let's see, whoops, that's the wrong one. Apologies. We'll go to the README. We'll look at the preview. So, and do forgive me, some of this is half-baked because I don't have the blog yet. The video I'm literally recording right now while also streaming it to you. So these links are not going to work. If you click them, I think it'll just take you to my YouTube page. I will have the blog post for this up soon with a link to this. Everyone's going to be interconnected. It's going to be all these streams that are crossing. So a couple of really quick caveats. Obviously, you're going to need, well, you don't really actually need that much familiarity with Playwright or TypeScript. The beauty of this is those tests don't even have to be executable. But I do mention it here in tooling. You could use this with Cypress. You could use this with Selenium WebDriver and its many implementations. Test.io. I'm sure there's tons that I'm forgetting. You could do it for your all your API tests. Rest Assured, Rest Sharp, Frisbee. You decide. You could probably do this with Jest and your component tests with Vitest. It's really the sky's the limit here. If you know how to write that standards doc, you could do this. It's really up to you. And you could use this for application code. It's just my world is test automation. So I wanted to try to create something that would help automated testers, right? Ideally, you could probably do this with unit tests too. I have a feeling most Gen I is going to be really good at writing, or solid at writing, unit tests out of the box without any guidance. Where here, I feel like when you're at the UI or service layer, you're going to need to do a little more hand-holding, and you may have particular standards or policies that you need to adhere to at your org that you're going to need the Gen AI to be aware of. So yeah, you're going to need the VS Code IDE. You're going to need the GitHub Copilot or the Amazon Q IDE add-ons. You're big boys and girls. You know how to go get them, I'm sure. Again, this we won't get into the additional resources because nothing works there because we're creating them right now. So some of the things you're going to need to do ahead of time, which again, you don't actually have to technically do step one if you don't want to. That's install node and npm. And I actually did. I put a good job, past Marcus. Future Marcus appreciates you putting that. Or future boomer. Technically optional, but helpful if you want to build and run the test. Yeah, you don't have to do this first step actually, but you will need VS Code. And you will need to sign up for and install generative AI code assistance for either GitHub Copilot or Amazon Q if you want to do this yourself. So first step, open VS Code, open the folder, navigate to the open. Why did it have that pound sign? That's weird. Let's fix that right now because that's really weird. Did I put a pound sign there? It's just really weird. Where am I seeing that? Yeah, I put a pound sign there for some weird reason. Oh well. We'll roll that back. Everyone watching live will just pretend that didn't happen. We'll just go back because editor Marcus is going to need this to be better. Our editor Boomer. So we'll go back to that preview. Sorry. Live editing. You see nothing. And I'm looking at the wrong preview too on top of that. Okay, now. None of that happened. So. Okay, guys, stop laughing. Let me get a drink of water. None of this happened. You saw nothing. So, open VS Code IDE, which we have opened. Open folder, so navigate to the project repo. So we'll do that again, right? We'll go open it. So in this case, AI assisted CR Playwright. We're open that. Boom, we're here again. In the Explorer, expand tests directory and open example.spec.ts. I think we've already got it open. It's open right there. So we'll use Q. Now, so click on the Amazon Q icon on the primary sidebar. So if you look over here, if you've got everything set up correctly, you'll have this. Otherwise, optionally, there is this little doodad down here if you can see it. But this is probably the ideal way you want to do that. So open up Amazon Q. It's going to open up the chat for you. We'll expand this to hopefully make it readable. And you can see my last session. Obviously, we can open up a new chat, make it nice and clean. Hi, I'm Amazon Q. I can answer your software development questions. Ask me either debug or optimize your code. You can enter / to quick actions, which you can, and use @ to add saved prompts, files, folders, or your entire workspace as context. And that's something I want to experiment with more as well. So in chat, we're going to prompt Amazon Q to review the code using the standards described in our codestandards.md file that we just went through in laborious detail. So really important with this. At least this is what I've experienced, so be careful. Type out this prompt. Do not copy pasta it. If you copy pasta it, it's not going to have a reference to your example.spec file. For some reason, when you paste it in, it's not smart enough to recognize the @ symbol, or maybe not smart enough. It just doesn't, it's not capable, at least from my experience so far. They may change that in future. you're watching this later, and you might be able to just copy pasta in. I would type this out because then it correctly got the reference to my file. So we're going to ask it to review the code in, you do the @ and then this pops up. Okay. You can go to files here and you can find your file. In this case, we want example.spec.ts. That's our really bad tests. And then it turns blue. That's how you know you're good. Now Amazon Q has a reference to your file. It's going to include your file in the prompt and consider it like a part of it. It understands and it'll look at that file. You could do that with like links and things like that. Like, hey, look at this, go look at this web page and give me a summary. All right, based on the standards described in, and then we're gonna do the same thing, @ symbol, go to files, because you can give it a whole folder if you want to. I found that when you narrow in the scope, it hallucinates a little less. If you give it the whole folder and then just kind of are generic with it, it tends to not do as well, in my opinion. So we want to give it access now to the code standards.md. So again, the beauty is this is very narrowly statically scoped, what we're going to ask it to do. So it's not going to look at your whole repository. It's not going to look at all your folder structure. It's just going to go into these two files and try to attempt to complete the task you gave it. So yeah, then both files mentioned should be highlighted. So check if they're blue. This indicates Amazon Q understands which files you're referencing. And I don't have a way, let's see. Yeah, I don't have a way to donate yet, but I'm thinking that I will probably put something here. For some reason, this was really helpful to you, or you really enjoyed it and you want to throw me a little bit of money to buy some more coffee, or to buy more electrolytes or better creatine. If you want to like fuel this machine of madness, I'm going to try to have ways in the future for people to support. Because obviously I don't have enough viewers anywhere to be monetized in any way, shape, or form. But I would like to be able to have a way for people to show like, hey, I got a lot out of this. So this is now the moment of truth. We're going to hit, we're going to send this prompt. So if you're curious what specific model Amazon Q is using, I got a really dodgy answer that I may ask it again just so you can see it. It was very like, we decide which is the best model to use to generate your code for you. It's like, so you don't want to tell me, you don't want me to be like, do any research using this free version of your tool. Be like, which model's better? Overall, Amazon Q is better at this task than GitHub Copilot. But if you don't like Amazon, you can follow the directions in the repo. You can do this with GitHub Copilot. It's really quite simple. What I will say before we finally hit play or send the prompt is I liked how Copilot immediately has context. So if you open a file, Copilot will tell you that this current file is the file you're referencing. And then you just have to give it reference to your code standards file. And it does a pretty good job of knowing what you're referencing. So I will say that Copilot is better at like understanding context within the repository. Amazon Q is not. Amazon Q, you have to be more explicit, but ultimately Amazon Q seems to be better at the task. So I don't want to just say like, oh, GitHub Copilot's trash, because it's not. It's just not as, right now, from everything, all the testing I've been doing, it's not as good at this. It might get better in the future. They may not care and they may not train for this, which is totally fair. I'm assuming their target demo is more, full stack developers and not automation engineers, right? Test automation engineers. But let's hit the play button. I think anyone that hasn't done this yet will be really, it does feel like a bit like magic when the response is really good. It feels like magic. So again, we're gonna go to the premise. You are either a new automation engineer, you're a QA engineer, you're a developer, maybe you're not as familiar with automated tests or whatever with the standards, or you just want to double check. This is now something to assist you. You are reviewing the code as well, and now you have an assistant with you who you have to check their work, but someone that may catch things that you didn't catch, that helps you see things or see violated rules or standards or better ways to do something that you may not have caught on your own. You have an assistant. Your brain is still working. You are in the driver's seat. Beep, beep, right? You're in the driver's seat, but you've got a co-pilot, and that's why they call it co-pilot. It just occurred to me why they called it co-pilot. Wow. Anyways, you've got an assistant with you. Wow. That shows, I don't know. It shows how not smart I am, maybe. So, yeah, without further without further blabbing, yapping, let's send this. Okay. Now it's cooking. Okay, and I'm not a big fan of... I'll say that too. Copilot's got just like a better chat interface. It's so tough because I feel like the front end experience is so much better with Copilot, but the actual content or the meat is not. So it says, I'll review the test code against the provided standards and suggest improvements. TypeScript standards violations. Use any type. So it's showing me the code. These should use explicit types instead. Yes, I agree. Thank you. And that was, oh, that's right. That is something I did. I purposely used any to see if it would catch this, and it did a great job catching this. It wants me to be, because why use TypeScript if you're not going to be explicit? Use var instead of let. Good catch there. Yep. Use let or const for block scoped variables. Thank you. Thank you. Inconsistent naming conventions. Variables like tsite, site, user. Use Pascal case instead of camel case. Oh, that's right. I did that on purpose too. I'm like remembering how badly I wrote these tests. Function our email uses Pascal's case instead of camel case. Playwright standards violations, not using web first assertions. Good catch there. Good catch. So it catches this one where I'm expecting and then awaiting, where you want to really await on the assertion state. Should be, yep, await, expect. So again, this is really good. You could feed it code maybe that you wrote. You could feed it code that you're looking at in a pull request and learn your company's standards. Learn to become better at your craft. This is a learning. It's like the opposite of what people think Gen AI is going to be. This is a great learning opportunity. In fact, this reinforces things that, for me as well. It reminds me like, oh, I got sloppy. I was being too quick, or we've got these old tests that we still rely on and they really should be up to our new standards. Throw it into this and it reminds you, okay, here's some stuff, and you could create a checklist. Even if you don't have Gen AI fix it, you like, okay, these are things I need to go fix. It becomes a backlog item. Go fix the stuff that Gen AI suggested we fix, Yeah, next one, using XPath and complex CSS selectors instead of more resilient locators. So it found some of our really, really bad XPath and CSS. And it said use more maintainable locators like get by role and get by test ID. Yep, those are much better. And I'm pretty sure it shows us a preview of like all the changes, and we'll see that at the end. Used fixed waiting times. Should use auto waiting features instead, like wait for a selector. I wish we could expand this. What does this do? Does this go to the end? I'm afraid to click it. I guess we could we could export the chat. So it caught our bad explicit or fixed waiting. Should use auto waiting features instead, like wait for selector, wait for load state. Yep. Journal test automation, standards violations. Missing clear or inject assert pattern in tests. Hard-coded values should be constants. So it's kind of just rolling through these. This is different than it did before. That's what's interesting about generative AI. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So duplicate code across tests, site URL, quick actions, dialogue handling. Yes, yes, yes. Well, dialogue handling, we wrote a function for that. That's an interesting hit there. We are doing it over and over, so maybe it wants us to use like a before method. Here's an example of how one of the tests could be improved. I like this. So what happens? Oh, I don't like that. I want to read through here. Okay. I really wish I could figure out a way to, okay, I acknowledge it. There we go. That'll give us a little more room. So it gives us a nice example. So it creates an interface for our user credentials, which I would also suggest this is really good if you're going to, it keeps you from, it containerizes the data you're going to work with, and well, it creates an interface for your test data, right? And your like test objects. So in this case, user credentials are like a reused test object. I like the idea of creating an interface there. The site URL, really, ultimately this should be configured in your test configuration itself. But this is a really good start for someone. Again, someone who's new and they keep typing the URL into their test. They should at least just have it. At the very least, this is the first step. Get it into a const. Then that const can become like a configurable value that gets inflicted by like the CI environment or by your local config. Much better test name. And maybe we should have the tests open on the side so we can compare. So you can see our old test, like our sign up test. Before, our sign up test just said sign up, where sign up with valid credentials. I actually would still criticize this test name. I would say something like user with valid credentials should be allowed to sign up. But still, this is a big step from here. But I would actually criticize this, and it actually generated a better test name last time I ran this. It does a really nice job breaking out arrange act assert for us. It creates one of our interfaces, our user credential interfaces. And it renamed our function to generate test email, which is a much better name. much better name than our email. So then it acts, it goes to the site URL. It's got much better selectors here, right? It fills out. We look at our test from before. Oh, sorry about that. We look at our test from before. We could see a vast improvement. This test already looks much better. And then it's got your hard assertion. One thing I will notice, it didn't seem to catch we were using hard assertions mid-test. And I'm fairly certain Amazon Q caught it before. So that this will be an opportunity for me to experiment with what I put in my rules doc to see if I can help the generative AI catch these sort of things. Because I did notice I don't think it caught, at least it didn't reference the fact that we were putting hard assertions. Like if you look here, there's like a hard assertion mid-test, and we use like no soft assertions. And I'm positive maybe it was Copilot that caught it. We'll have to do another one of these sessions and use Copilot instead. So yeah, we've got our assert, again, correctly written, where there are no assertions. Let's see, let's go to our sign up. We have no assertions in this sign up, and now they make sure to put an assert. And then they show us how they renamed our generate test email. Well, before it was our email, they use one const, and they just return, they do the kind of transforming of the string in the return line. Also, instead of any type, they're returning a string, which is good. Again, I purposely, it felt bad to purposely put any to see if it would catch it. And then it gives you some additional recommendations. Implement proper test isolation. Okay. Add error handling. I would agree there too. Consider using test fixtures for common setup. Yes. That's really good for Playwright. Add meaningful test descriptions. Which again, they get a C+. Amazon Q gets a C+ for this. I would be a little more descriptive, but it's fine. It's a vast improvement from the previous test, right? Let's see here. Add proper test data. Okay. Yeah. Consider implementing page object model pattern for better maintainability. I agree. Add proper test data management instead of using global variables. Yep. We kind of already talked about that. You generally want your test data to come from somewhere else. Maybe it's like a MongoDB database that just holds test data. That's something I'll do another video on in the future, is because test data is one of the biggest struggles of test automation. Okay. Implement proper dialogue handling strategy across all tests. Yeah, so you could have a global utility to handle those, right? Instead of our one utility within the test, because we're going to have other tests probably deal with that dialogue. Add proper cleanup after tests. I disagree. I actually disagree. We might put this in my personal rules. I disagree with this one. We don't want to get off on a rabbit trail, but there's an idea of dangling state. So when your tests fail, you want the system to be in the state that it failed, because this allows you to investigate. If you clean up after your tests when they fail, and maybe again, you could clean up if your test passes, not clean up if it fails, whatever. But still, generally, there's a completely different, again, there's a dangling state. You should really be inflicting the state that you want at the beginning of the test and getting the environment in the state you want it to be before testing. Because it'd be like being a detective and going to a crime scene and then pouring bleach on everything and setting it on fire. It'd be like, time to investigate. Like, no, you don't want to throw a match, gasoline, match, and bleach on your crime scene. You want your crime scene to be in the state after the crime took place. So when your tests fail, you want dangling state. You want the state to hang around so you can go, the database, something's wrong with the database, something's wrong with this. You want that state to remain. So I'm going to partially disagree with Amazon Q here. Sorry, Amazon Q. As much as I've talked highly of you, this is where I disagree a little bit. Consider adding retry logic for flaky operations. Okay, that's a generic. Add proper logging for debugging purposes. I agree. Playwright's logging is lacking. It's going to get better, I'm sure, but these changes would make the test more maintainable, reliable, and aligned with the provided code standards. You get a thumbs up, because I'm sure that, and then what's really great, it gives you lots of follow-up here, right? Like, you can dig deeper into this. So anyways, I hope this was informative and enjoyable for folks out there. If you're watching this later on YouTube, please, down in the comments, tell me what you thought about this. If you have any requests for future things you'd like to me explore, I have lots of ideas about a couple of things. I got lots of ideas. But I could do this again with a different programming language and a different testing framework. Like, we could do this with Cypress and see the results we get, because I use Cypress quite a bit as well as Playwright. We could do Playwright in Python. We could do Selenium WebDriver in Java. Really, the sky's the limit. But tell me down below if you have any comments or thoughts about this. Do you think AI is going to take all of our jobs? I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. Generative AI now is like a useful tool. It's really just a tool. It's really just an assistant. But let me know if you disagree with me. Tell me down below. And again, I am live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time every week, unless something comes up. But I try to be live at this time every week now. I have a schedule. You can go follow me on, I believe I'm on Facebook. I'm on X. I don't think I'm anywhere else. But definitely, go subscribe to my YouTube channel if that's something you're into. I'm going to try to post nice edited videos, but I stream live there. I stream live Twitch. I stream live on Kick. And it was so nice. I don't know if you're still there, Sudo, please. But it was really cool to have someone over on Kick. I really appreciate that, because this is like my second stream on Kick. I run my own Restream server locally. And then I also, to deal with HTTP, RTMP or IMTP. Well, to deal with the secure version of that, I actually use Restream as like kind of a tunnel, because I'm too lazy to set up the secure tunnel. But locally, I'm streaming to Twitch and YouTube right off my own Restream server, and then also send the stream there to go to Kick and probably go to other places. But appreciate you hanging out with me. Like I said, like, subscribe, all that typical stuff, please. If you like this and you want more, it helps me know. It helps YouTube know to show it to other people. But I appreciate you. Be good to yourself. Eat good food. Get outside. Touch some grass. Don't be too hard on yourself. And don't worry, AI is not going to take our jobs yet, at least not developers. And in fact, if you're a tester, I feel like you actually have now the most important job. I think a lot of these, like safety and alignment work is going to get absorbed by software quality and risk assessment and management. I really think now is the time to learn these tools. Now is the time to get comfortable and familiar. One more thing, again, make sure you go over the repository if you want to do this yourself. And again, if you have trouble doing this locally yourself, hit me up in the comments. send me a DM on one of the platforms that you're watching on. I'd love to, or shoot me an email. You know, I've got a link to my email in the README file right here. If you go to the README file in the repo, you can send me an email. Be nice. Please be nice. And I should add the Kick link to this too. I have failed Kick. But I do have a consultancy as well. This is probably the last plug. If you or your org is struggling with testing, risk assessment, or you want to do more with generative AI and you have no idea where to start with your testing team, please, please, please consider going to our site and dropping us a message. It's levelupqa.com. There's contact pages. Someday I will have a contact form, but we offer free 40-minute introductory video consultation. Free! It costs nothing for you, and you can have any important stakeholders, or if you need to know where to go next in your career or whatever, click that link. You can schedule a 40-minute appointment with one of us, and we can try to help you accelerate your test automation or level it up even, you could say. But again, lastly, I really appreciate all of you. Shout out to Joe Colantonio with Automation Guild, because that's what inspired this particular topic, where I kind of took it and used my super on the spectrum powers to make this a little more, for me, a little more containerized so that someone could grab the repo and just try it. We'll grab the repo, install a few things and try it, but a little more guidance. You don't have to write the code standards. You don't have to write the bad tests. You can kind of just get started. But I appreciate you, and have a nice day. And I will see anyone else on Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Twitch, YouTube, Kick. I hope you're there. Have a good one.